Buenos días. Good morning. I speak in English. We had a beautiful retreat yesterday and a presentation of the congregational journey so far. And that is background for my presentation now. We have heard from Carlos how this...
Traductor que no se oye.
Okay.
The translator.
Que tienes en la mano así pegado al...
Sí. Do you hear me?
Yes.
No.
No, pero estás en el canal justo 1. Hay algo, ¿no? No se escucha bien el canal.
Hello? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Right?
Están distraídos en el canal 1. Se escucha. Se escuchan tantas cosas según la traducción.
While they are getting ready, I invite you for an exercise. Our theme is about this fire of our charism. I invite you to close your eyes and be in touch with that internal charism, the fire that is there in you.
Estamos en vivo, disculpen las fallas técnicas. Los que están me dicen que se pasen los de francés al canal 4. De 3 a 4. Español. Español está bien. Ok.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Sí, ahora va a traducir desde aquí. O sea que puedes hablar.
So we start with one moment of silence to be in touch with this fire of God's love that shapes our life and transforms us. We want to be mystics in mission today, dedicated to the cause of Jesus. As our founder did in his time. Claretian spirituality is related to this fire. What this fire does in our life. How this fire affects our relationships. And this fire is our faith, hope, and love. This fire is God's love poured into our hearts. And God's love has a face, the face of Jesus Christ. So at the core of my presentation is our Christian experience, even though I may be going around. There are 2 moments, or 2 parts. The theme is our pilgrim journey, a transformative path, and the hazards on the way. And the second part would be about how we can today journey towards a transformative spirituality. Carlos was saying how in the past the structures and the norms were actually impeding the free expression of our charism. And Vatican II and the journey afterwards was rendering much more easy, free this charism structurally. My interest is how our own personal structures can domesticate and prevent this fire to transform us. And therefore we need an inner work, individually and collectively. We are at a different time, and how to be mystics in our time. When we visited the seminary, Claret was one of the 700 seminarians. In the cathedral, that baptismal font was broken when people were together wanting to hear Claret who was preaching. Or in the square, before going to Cuba, Claret spoke to the people and the square was full of, and you saw that square, public place, was full of people on the other day. But probably not for a discourse on religion. We are at a different times. Why do we need an integral transformative missionary spirituality? Quoting Pope Francis, what we are experiencing is not simply an epoch of changes, but an epochal change, which entails decisions that rapidly transform our ways of living, of relating to one another, of communicating and thinking, of how different generations relate to one another, and how we understand and experience faith and science. In Evangelii Gaudium, speaks of a kind of evangelizers, the need for evangelizers to be bold and creative in their mission, ready to adapt to the unique challenges of the modern world while remaining rooted in the gospel. Spirit-filled evangelizers who pray and work, fearlessly open to the working of the Holy Spirit, full of fervor, joy, generosity, courage, boundless love, and attraction. We long to be this kind of missionaries in our time. And that is our collective dream, which the last chapter was also inviting us. Pope Francis sent a message to us on this occasion. We will read it at another time. But the core message was, continue to rekindle the charism of St. Anthony Mary Claret in the life of each religious and within your communities, so that the fire of the Spirit may enkindle in you the zeal for souls. So I will be using three words that will recur. One is the fire. The second, the journey. And the third, transformation. Beginning with this biblical image, the burning bush. The burning that goes on burning without burning out. And if every Claretian is that kind of a burning bush, in their context, it would be wonderful. The pilgrim journey of the people of God with God by their side. A transformation process through history. How Israel went from a nomadic people into chosen messengers of God. The fire of the burning bush. The fire that burns but does not burn out. We have seen traditions who do incredibly great things but continue calmly. It's possible. And it is that kind of a fire that we need to kindle. There are other fires also that can burn out oneself and others. A place of encountering the divine. It is at this fireplace, the fire that burns in our communities, that we grow together. A setting for revelation and sending in mission. Fire, Claret's preferred image. He wants every Claretian to be on fire with love. Everyone in the Claretian family. Spread its flames wherever we go. To desire mightily and strive by all means possible to set everyone on fire with God's love. This continues to challenge us and invite us, and in this Jubilee year, this is one of our core passages for meditation and contemplation. Claret speaks of the locomotive. The fire of love acts like the fire in the engine of a locomotive or a ship. What good if there is no fire and steam to move them? What good is a priest with degrees in theology and canon law if he lacks the fire of love? He is like a locomotive without steam, not good for himself and for others. The fire in the heart. There are writers outside who speaks of this fire, which God has instilled in everyone and for us through our charism, Christian faith, and its flowering through our charism. It's a burning of the heart that I want, Rumi says. It is this burning that is everything, more precious than the empire of the world, because it calls God secretly in the night. A man who is not on fire is nothing. He is ridiculous. He is two-dimensional. He must be on fire even if he does make a fool of himself. A flame must burn somewhere, otherwise no light shines. There is no warmth, there is nothing. Call you. This way, this precious fire in us and together in our community is the core of Claretian spirituality. And our founder is a model of burning and keep it burning. And many Claretians who have gone before us, and many who also exemplify that. A pilgrim journey, the journey of Israel, this going, the journey of each one called by God. Jesus walked with the apostles. We have also received a calling like that of the apostles and have been granted the gift to follow Christ in a communion of life and go out into the whole world to proclaim the good news to every creature. And in Claret's life, we have this constant journey. When I speak of this journey, it's not just going to physically, it's also a journey inward. Palacios used to show that action. We are itinerant, moving. This is embedded in our life, a journey inward and then journey outward. Though I may not be speaking of missionary activities, it is implied. Without this inner journey, outer journey would be impossible. So we dream of a pilgrim congregation, rooted in faith in Jesus Christ and in Claretian spirituality. So this pilgrim nature, if we lose that, we get installed, rigid, and that's a danger. Thinking of our congregation and the possible reduction of numbers, certainly we are interested in numbers. To me, the tragedy would be if this fire in the hearts of our brothers is put off, is extinguished or domesticated, we are running a big risk of being irrelevant in our world, in our times. And today we are the ones, the generation who has to leave this charism, and therefore we are responsible to take care of it in us and also in our communities, in our organisms. Where to the pilgrim journey? If we do not know where we want to go, it doesn't matter which way we take. Alice in Wonderland. For the preparation of this, St. Paul invites us, but shows us where our faith journey takes us, that we may comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth, the length, the height, and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all fullness of Christ. So a process of transformation. Thanks to the action of the Spirit, our formation is a process of continuous and integral transformation that configures us to the person of Christ and sends us to the universal mission in the style of Claretiana. So this transformation has a vertical. You can think of the stairs of Jacob. It is going up and down. And also a horizontal dimension. And at the center is this person. Without this centrality of the Paschal mystery, transformation will not be possible. So what do saints and sages speak of the higher levels of spiritual transformation? I made an individually research and also together using this artificial intelligence to get a summary of what the saints say about the journey of human beings. These were the people whom I sought. They were from the Catholic world and two others from the Eastern world, two sages. We have Teresa of Avila, Maestro Eckhart, St. Thomas Aquinas, John of the Cross, and Teilhard de Chardin, and Buddha and Aurobindo from the East. 5 things came out in this. A profound and lasting sense of oneness with God and perfection of charity. A high level of sense of union with God and with one another. A deep sense of peace, joy, and love. Even they are in the midst of fire. Problems abound. But there is this transparent peace and joy. Surrender to God's will and a constant awareness of His presence. Every action and thought are expressions of God's will. Transcend all worldly attachments and desires and have profound understanding of the true nature of reality. What is superficial, temporal, to what is deeper in the others and in this world. Love urges the transformative process of human faculties converging towards greater unity, fullness of love, and service to improve the lot of others. Applying this, do we see that in Claret? Do we see these traits in some degrees in us? To some extent, I believe. And Claret's spiritual transformation, I just say a few things. We have already reflected on that. One of the things that strike me is this going out, because this love impulse to reach out to as many as possible. The fraternal love and care and this experience of God together. The way he speaks about his community members, particularly in Cuba, the description he gives, not focused on their limitations, but rather the beauty of their persons, the deepest truth about them. How beautiful it is we can first see that in our brothers, and then the limitations we together strive to improve. And the two great graces of Claret's life, the enduring Eucharistic presence and the infused love for those hostile to him, he calls the great La Grazia Grande. think of the consciousness of Claret. To have this as a kind of permanent presence speaks of the transformation of that little boy or that young man passing through the vicissitudes of life. Each of us has that possibility in our own unique story. So Claret, the hazards on the way. Hard to say that our life and missionary reflects desirable levels of integration and spiritual heights. Now coming to us today, our own realities, we know that we are still on the way. Thinking of conflicting community relationships. The sadness is not having differences and conflicts. The way we manage it. It can be productive, raising us to a higher, or we have communities where it remains at that level and erodes apostolic energy in persons and the potential for doing good. Feeling sad about in our old age is fine, but not enough. If we are able to manage, then we are also witnessing to people how we can be missionaries having differences and conflicts. Lone rangers, people who want to do alone when we hear of the synodal journey. And when they cannot, the mission suffer. Lot of contradictions. Highly qualified persons who mentor others but fail to manage their relationship with confreres. The provincials here or those in government knows what I mean. Addictions and allergies that handicap ministry. Explicit contradictions easily visible to others but not to the person himself. Patterns of sexual and financial abuses. We are all sinners, we make mistakes. But mistakes remain, or lie and truth cannot be distinguished, then we are in a difficult situation. Certainly our conducts may be far better than the secular world where arms, finance are used to settle differences. But then ours is a different. A quotation which I sometimes shared 20 years before, but still sometimes when I see realities, it challenges us. We need to improve. We take promising young men from 13 to 25 years of age, feed them well, educate them diligently, and 8 to 12 years later, we ordain them healthy, bright, emotional 13-year-olds. Sometimes we can get stuck. Maybe we don't have tools. Robbing people of their responsibility in this evolution and transformation is the worst thing we can do to another human person. At times, I think too much of protection deprive people in our own conducts. Kindergarten boy with a beard. This was a comment made by a religious on some behavior of our missionaries. No. The way of reactions to certain situations were like young boys, but then what we call adult children. Why it is serious when it happens among us or in our provinces? Pope Benedict said the greatest persecution of the church comes not from external enemies, but arises from sins within her. We don't want to hurt our church. We love the church because we are the church. Valentina Lasky she presented it in our meeting when Pope called for the bishops for a meeting. I was also a participant in that. This word struck me very much. You must understand that we have to be more rigorous with you than with others by virtue of your moral role. Stealing, for example, is wrong, but if the one stealing is the police officer, it seems more serious to us because it is the opposite of what he should do, which is to protect the community. If doctors and nurses poison their patients rather than take care of them, the act draws even more of our attention because it goes against their ethics, their professional code. Well, we know there has been a lot of publicity on the abuses, and church has suffered, but also church has been perhaps the only institution we had the courage to address it. And we congregations also join, because we see how important we missionaries who represent Christ in representing him before the people. Why do we spiritually stagnate? One of the longest periods of formation, 8 to 12 years, additional several years for specialization, availability of spiritual means, but a lower spiritual ROI, poor return on investment in terms of spiritual growth. Where do we fail? Some observations. Age and integrity are not necessarily connected. True. Studies and intellectual erudition are important, but not sufficient for spiritual transformation. Spiritual practices, sacraments, meditation, prayers are necessary, but not adequate. Grace and personal collaboration work together for effecting transformation. So a holistic approach that integrates desire and discipline, studies and spiritual practices, faith and reason, awareness and activities is necessary for one's spiritual unfolding. This is why we want to grow in the experience of the intimacy of Christ and fraternal unity, communion, progressively radiating the joy of the gospel around, mission, and discerning together to respond to the call of God, participation. And that takes me to the second part, towards an integral, transformative, flourishing spirituality. I leave a half a minute for you just to be in touch with something that I have said here has been provocative to you. Okay, good. I will take you a map. It's only one part of it. The rest of it is there in the article, the material that will be shared in writing. Just to get a panorama, I found some of the modern authors invite us to think much broader than our theological and spiritual world. So we take a little bit outside of our normal area of reflections. One of the persons who helped in this is Ken Wilber. I take the material, what was useful, taking it away from the psychoanalytic language. So try to be simple, but I found it helpful from my experience of the last 30 years of formative and accompanying work. These insights speak of 4 processes of transformation. This is what I will deal now. There are other things that is there in the writing. Maybe whatever is useful, we could develop in our own ongoing formation or formative journey. These are the 4. Growing up through various stages, waking up, the spiritual consciousness as a gift of God received, but we need to prepare. Cleaning up, purification or shadow work, and showing up, freely gifting to the church, to the society. We take the first one, growing up, the stages of growing. those who are familiar in the psychological world of development, there are hundreds of theories on personal growth in the Piaget development, Lobinger, hundreds of them. They all speak of several stages. But these stages are going to a higher levels. And knowing that will help us not to get stuck. See, to speak a language, we don't have to know the language, but the grammar, we still can speak. If you know the grammar, it's easier to speak the correct language. Same way, the marvelous unfolding of the mystery of growing up and waking up. So life is this journey. And even very contemplation of this can marvel at what God has initiated. Think of us in the womb of our mothers. There is an interesting meditation by two Jesuits, which sometimes I do it, with Jesus' return to the process of our growth. And think of our infancies, the school, and the young one beginning to think. Some of you may remember my comment during the chapter. I enjoy seeing couples holding the child and walking, the safety of a child. When that child tells to the parents at one time, I feel this call, I love this congregation, and they entrust us to the congregation. And the mother congregation should receive them with that care and concern and continue journey in the novitiate. And even when we discover that this vocation is not for that person, with the same love, we should ask them to discontinue. But missing this maternal role of the congregation is to convert us into a business group which recruits people and then hire and fire at the interest. We are not. This is why I personally enjoy our congregation as the congregation of the Sons of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And the revolution of love, which is possible in that forge of her heart, is very wonderful. And we have the final profession and here. But some of the vital questions are important to be raised, and then in our transformation and awakening, this get mature. If that process is not assisted, we can get stuck. And even in an old age, we can be infants with beard. So, growing up to greater expansion and inclusion when we grow, this is a very simple, rudimentary presentation. At the beginning, there is this world is smaller, egocentric, only partial. As we grow to more ethnocentric, I sometimes think that we get stuck predominantly at that. Think of the tensions between groups, tribal fights. The dynamics sometimes are at this level. Or concerns about the importance. I remember somebody was asking Obeya, after 5 years of a difficult mission, now what do I get? Because he was asking for specialization after 5 years of a difficult mission. Well, where is the sender? Jesus or I? Or during the chapters, our people need to be represented. Is the provincial coming from ours? Is ethnocentric. To get stuck at ethnocentric levels is to domesticate and reduce the possibility of the congregation. Or world-centric. I would call it Christocentric. It's a bigger heart that has developed. Or cosmocentric. It is possible that we can get blocked at ego or ethnocentric levels as predominantly. When we have meetings and when we are together, fine times, they do not appear. They do appear at our challenging times. Growing up through stages then is a spiral journey with egocentric, ethnocentric, world-centric, whole-centered, and it is here we can have these three dangers: get fixed, or in difficult times regress, or we grow when there is appropriate help. So this one can be stuck egocentric or ethnocentric, as I just explained, or remaining as a good social worker. We take care if it doesn't come off right. So this is where we need a higher level of consciousness or development in order to reflect Christ. And that needs to move, the capacity to move from me to include others, and the capacity to enter into the skin of others. We say to look at others and reality through the eyes of Jesus, or love them through the heart of Jesus. Then what Claret says, he has that outpouring love when he was persecuted in Madrid. This man was not think of organizing a revenge, and think of people who spend their time in revenge. There are also many elements. I like to say one thing which is relevant for us in this time, and this is the different generations that the present Claretians are. There are many of us born before 1950, the traditionalists, people like me and my age, baby boomers, the generation of X, the millennials, the generation Z, and now they speak of the generation Alpha after 2012. But we are groomed in a certain mindset, a way of thinking. Hard work, discipline, and respect for authority, and things were black and white, clear. And you have seen, the first thing we see is what is going wrong. We judge. The optimism work. The generation X, independence, skepticism, value diversity, and digital natives. Think of our intercultural community. And a Claretian who has not updated himself and involved these values, we can have serious generational gap. The seniors have an advantage. They have already a richness and they have been growing. If they were open to integrate, they will be the guardians. And the Pope says, your old men will dream dreams and your young men will see visions. I think this awareness that we are groomed at a particular generation with an openness to also integrate that of the emerging generations is very important. With another additional thing is the cultures and their specialities. Some cultures are hierarchic, some are horizontal, liberal. And our intercultural communities live that drama, which is also important in our spirituality. This process, cross crisis and brokenness as a door to wholeness and holiness. This is where managing failures and cracks are important. I don't think anyone here has been perfectly growing. At least I know that I have not. I make mistakes, I have broken. The crack is where the light gets in. The famous singer, Canadian singer. The wound is the place where the light enters you, Rumi. In vulnerability, we become receptive to grace, love, and healing. Embracing our suffering we can move closer to the divine. So how to learn the art of transforming pain into growth as a culture, and the way we support one another than condemning one another. Here comes a few principles. One, in the growth process, the earlier stages are integrated into higher, more complex levels of consciousness. So each stage transcends the previous one by retaining its essential aspects and adding new, more advanced elements as we grow. So this include and transcend makes us at home. We need not be afraid of giving up. As Carlos was saying, certain things are obsolete. No, in the earlier times, we need to go as a congregation. But there are danger of addictions and allergies if not included and transcended. And this is where we need to offer help and seek help. I don't go deep into that. The subject of one level of growth becomes object at the next level. This principle is very helpful, has helped me personally. The thoughts, feelings, and perspectives we identify with at one stage become something we can reflect upon and understand from a higher stage. Think of a clerician who is angry with the provincial. If he is aware that he is angry, that makes a difference. He can deal with it. Otherwise, he is so convinced that the provincial is against him, or vice versa. Second is waking up. The stages of awakening describe a progression from self-centered perspective to an all-encompassing consciousness, where one's sense of self expands to include larger and larger circles of care and concern. Love, which is the fire, now engages more and more in me and others. Identity expands from gross body to subtle and causal. You think of Teresa of Lisieux, my vocation is love. Self-identity expands as one awakens to truth, beauty, and love. At a gross body level, like corporeal identity. Once I visited one of the formation houses as prefect of formation. I had a meeting with one student who immediately told me, "Father, I am gay." Why? The first sentence was, "I am gay." So we had a conversation. Then I asked him, "You are more than being gay. You are a child of God." The other one is, "How do I live?" But at that level, one's awareness is centered about one's bodily and that level, which consumes. This is what I understand when Vatican says that when there are radically rooted orientations that can affect our style of life, we cannot live our life at a level of consciousness which is centered on our bodily self. There is a subtle body which opens to higher, more non-visible realities, like thoughts. If one identifies and lives with one's own ideologies and ideas, we still miss. We are more than that. We, in our spirituality, we speak of our founder as a living reality. Risen Lord, Mary as persons in our world. Think of Richard Dawkins. Recently, I had one interview with Chaim Hirsi, a recently converted Christian from atheism. One is the world is so limited to thinking and reason, but the world is much more. And still deeper is a causal or non-dual existential identity as a child of God. And that is the foundation of a joy without a reason. At this level, our body and mind are integrated, or other levels are integrated. It's a tragedy to live and die as a clerician without having known this deepest mystery that we are, a child of God, not just at the head level, the whole being, At that level of being, the other one is my own brother or a sister. God is love. Not an idea level of God is love, an existential, experiential, touching that as more or less a base. It comes and goes. And that's the difference between a stage of growth and state of consciousness. Something that I think we need to work on. Knowing Christ is to know oneself. And I think we are coming to the end. So we need, an example is interior castle and the deep experience of Teresa of Avila. At lower levels, we cannot leave our identity. So third is cleaning up. I will use one. This is where we need our shadow work. How many minutes more? 1 minute. Finish. 2. Okay. I will use, we have our impediments. I will use one, an example from a film which I translated into. We try to fly high with high ideas. But if we have these blocks, egocentric use of power, unintegrated spirituality, and trying to fly high, that can cause and damage. And this is the power abuse. We need then a kind of a work. How do we work on our own blocks, shadows that prevent? And this Japanese movies and Japanese art is how to work and make it beautiful. And this is what happens in us when we are not afraid of our mistakes, failures, but take appropriately. And that is where showing up comes. Through this work, we gift ourselves to the church, to the congregation. And that is what our founder has shown us. I consider this important for us, updating and installing spiritual practices. One, which came out these days repeatedly, daily 1 hour of personal prayer. Desire alone will not. And examine of conscience. Having a spiritual director or mentor, not assume that I can manage by myself. Conversations in the spirit and mutual accompaniment. Personal and community discernment as a practice. Personal project, community projects, pastoral plans. And several of our missions do not bother about it. By making it, we collectively work and think together and envision together. Let us strive to grow individually and collectively towards the dream God has for us, for our institutes, Claretian family. And Jesus tells us, go and do likewise.